Good morning, everybody, or whatever time of day you're watching this. It's been a while since I posted, and I just have not had an opportunity to sit down, do a proper video, edit, and wait for it to upload. If you're looking for quick little updates on the kids or like what we're doing or Weston's health, you can follow me on Periscope. I'll try to put that, or try to remember to put that information in the box below. But as of right now, YouTube is going to take a really big back seat, just because there's too much going on in my life to fit it in right now. Things with Weston have been nothing short of chaotic and busy and terrifying. The last time that I talked to you, I said that heart surgery was back on the table, that he had an enlarged right side of the heart, and possibly a narrowing, but we were all under the impression, and when I say we, I mean everyone, including his pediatrician, and even my family doctor, were all under the impression that he may need a little patch to correct it, and everything should be fine after that. Weston was going every Friday to the hospital to get weight checks and blood pressure checks, and the reason for the weight checks was because he was gaining weight super slowly. Sometimes he was losing it, so he was having trouble even maintaining it. So we had to stop nursing, unfortunately, because I needed a formula and needed to add extra calories to it. To ensure that he was getting enough and to ensure that he wasn't going to continue to lose weight, just at least maintain what he had and gain eventually. The blood pressure checks was due to the heart murmur. Just wanted to err on the side of caution, I guess. So it was 3 weeks ago Friday that his doctor detected Weston having high blood pressure in his arm and normal blood pressure in his leg. Weston, I guess, has always had high blood pressure. I never really knew what would count as high blood pressure for a baby. I don't really pay attention, I guess. Hang on. I'm desperately in need of one of these. Anyways, I didn't really know what counted as high blood pressure for a baby. Now that I do. But I guess Weston always had high blood pressure, and they were continuing to get readings of high blood pressure in the arm and normal blood pressure in the leg, but I guess it was so bad 3 weeks ago that the doctor sent us home from the hospital, and hang on a sec. Doctor sent us home from the hospital, and she consulted with the cardiologist Weston deals with, and then called me up about 2 or 3 hours later and told me to pack my bags, that we were being sent to the children's hospital. Which I was like, okay. I mean, it's quite a distance away from us, and they don't really send you there unless it's serious, so I was kind of nervous. I called up the children's hospital and I said, what exactly are we coming for? Like, what tests are you going to do? Because I need to know, I need to plan ahead, like how much clothes I'm going to have to bring, or like if you think it's only going to be like an hour appointment, then I'll just come home the same day. She said that instead of doing the cardiology clinic in my city, which the cardiologists from the children's hospital come to 3 times a year, they were going to send Weston to the children's hospital right where the cardiologists are at and so on, and do it there. So that's a second echocardiogram, another ECG, and what else? Oh yeah, the consult with the cardiologist. Sorry, so much has happened that it's just hard to remember it all. Echo, ECG, consult. Okay, so I was like, well, that shouldn't take... I might be there all day, but we wouldn't need to be there any more than a day. So I only packed clothes for overnight. I figured our appointment was at 10 in the morning, and I figured maybe we'd get out of there by 3. We'll go down the morning of. We left at 4 in the morning to go down. Just made it to the appointment on time. So we'll just relax for the afternoon, maybe have a nice dinner in the evening, and then, take our time coming back. There will be no rush. So we get there on the 19th of October, and they take Weston back and do weight and height and an ECG. And I didn't see if the ECG read abnormal, which I'm sure it did. But anyways, they did another echocardiogram, and they did get away without sedation, and he was so cooperative. They're fantastic at the Children's Hospital, probably because they only deal with children, versus in my city where they deal with everybody, and they don't really specialize in children, so it's hard to get them to cooperate. Weston was fantastic, though. They got a really good look at everything without the use of sedation. So after that, the doctor looked over the results. It didn't take him very long, probably about 15 minutes. And we went back to this consult room, and there's a big picture of the heart on the wall. And he's like, or we walk in there, and he's like, oh, I can already tell what's wrong with Weston just by looking at him. I look at him, or I look at Weston, and I'm like, okay, how can you tell? And he's like, well, first of all, you see this place in the heart right here? And then he pointed to it, and he's like, this is all narrow in here, and this is what it's called, and this is what it means. I said, all right, hang on one sec. So yeah, I said, all right. And then he points to another spot in the heart, and he's like, well, this is narrow here, and this is what it's called, and this is what it means. And I said, okay. And this continues. And I'm losing it at this point. Like, his heart is so bad that I said, how in the hell did they not pick this up at the anatomy scan? And he said, oftentimes they don't. They wouldn't really do an in-depth look until like later on in pregnancy, like 26, 32 weeks, somewhere around there. Even though I requested them to do a fetal echocardiogram because Ellie had one done as well. I guess they just didn't listen to me when it came to that. And they just did like a regular anatomy scan and didn't bother doing the fetal echocardiogram. So yeah, it really wouldn't be detected on an anatomy scan. Then, like, I was so upset and distraught at this point that he said, I'm gonna stop talking to you about this for the day. The next step is we need to get Weston admitted as soon as possible. You won't be leaving today. We need to get Weston an MRI to look at the aortic arch to see if there's any coarctation of the aorta, and if there is, we need to do immediate open heart surgery to save his life. And I nearly fell to the floor. The MRI needed to be done with sedation because he needed to sit still for a good 20 minutes. So I said, all right, and it takes time to schedule all of these things, so we were going to be there a couple of days, he said. And then I went back to, well, you told me that you could tell what was wrong with Weston just by looking at him. What did you mean? And he said, Weston has Williams syndrome. He has a distinct facial feature of Williams syndrome. And I looked at Weston, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, where do you see this facial feature? What is it? And apparently it's the space between the nose and the lips is longer. And it's a distinct characteristic of Williams syndrome. It's the only one Weston has that I know of. I mean, we had a geneticist come look them all over, and that was the only comment that they made. But Williams syndrome is a deletion of a few genes, I think of upwards of 25 to 26 genes on chromosome 7. Chromosome 7 is the elastin gene. I don't know the proper terms to use, but it's where the child is lacking in elastin, which helps your muscles grow and stretch. A lot of children with Williams syndrome are extremely colicky, which clearly he's not, because there's extra calcium buildup in the kidneys. Like, it affects so many functions in the body. Like, it affects the kidneys, it affects if the child has reflux, it affects the heart, it affects the brain, where the child can have developmental delays and learning disabilities. But the spectrum is so vast, just like autism, where you can have high functioning autism right down to needing 24-hour care, and nonverbal and like severe autism. I don't know where Weston is going to fall on this spectrum. I can tell you at this point, at 4 months old, Weston is meeting every milestone he should be, and then some, although I've never heard him laugh before, and hopefully I don't start crying. That's one thing. I've never heard Weston laugh before. I've heard him like do a little mini giggle, but I've never heard him have a belly laugh yet. So I'm pretty emotional about that. Because of the heart issues Weston has, it is a life-threatening condition. There's a lot of challenges he's going to face when he's older and even has a baby. So they brought us up to the surgery floor, which is the 7th floor, and I'm sitting there with my child, and I'm just like, I feel like I could just throw up. This like was not expected. We were expecting, there was a little narrowing, like a simple procedure would fix, to we may need to do immediate open heart surgery because he would die if we don't. So I just had this wild look in my eyes, like a deer caught in headlights. I just wanted to take him and run. Anyway, so we got settled, and the geneticist came in and talked to us, and, I wanted to educate myself about Williams syndrome because I've never heard of it. It is rare. There's different links that suggest that it's 1 in every 10,000 to 1 in every 20,000 births, so whichever number, but it is rare. So I didn't want to jump on Google and scare the hell out of myself, but I did need to learn about it, and the geneticist came in and told me a great website to look at, and upon looking through these studies, like legitimate studies that they have on there that tell you about it, there was a link that says Williams syndrome and anesthesia risks. So I click on it, and come to find out there is a much higher sudden death risk with kids with Williams syndrome and any type of sedation, anesthesia used. It just doesn't agree with them. I think it has something to do with their heart, obviously, and maybe the elastin too. I'm not really exactly sure why they have a higher sudden death risk. I just know that they do. And I learned that it was really important that the anesthesiologist know what they have to do differently for Williams syndrome children versus the general public, because if they don't treat the Williams syndrome child differently for anesthesia purposes, the consequences are death. And my child was set to be put to sleep for an MRI. So I pretty much lost my shit, and I was completely convinced that I was just going to be handing my child over to these doctors and nurses, and I might not get him back alive. So it was completely traumatizing to me and to him, because he had to go through all of these tests and blood work and getting IVs, and it was traumatizing for the both of us. So God, he's cute. So I asked the cardiologist how many Williams syndrome children that they deal with, and he said 1 to 2 a year. And I told them that, I need to have a conversation with the anesthesiologist, because I need to make sure for my own well-being and Wes's well-being that they realize that they need to treat Williams syndrome children differently. This is not something that they deal with on the everyday, and just be sure that they know that they need to do things differently. And this wasn't going to be a quick 20-minute conversation before the procedure happened. It was going to be in depth the day before, and if it wasn't going to happen, then I wasn't going to consent to the MRI. And then a part of me felt guilty on top of that, because if I wasn't going to consent to the MRI and there was something wrong with the aortic arch, Weston would die. But at the same time, if I consented to this procedure and they didn't do things differently for him, he could die. So it was just very difficult as a mother to make those decisions for your child when it feels like you could lose them no matter what decision you make. Like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Thankfully, I convinced the anesthesiologist that maybe general anesthesia was a little bit too much for him, being, he was only not even 4 months old at the time, and I was just feeling very uneasy with everything that I had read, and the cardiologist recommended that they do general anesthesia. So after a lengthy discussion with the anesthesiologist, we decided that a oral sedation would be better. It was still going to put him to sleep, but it wasn't going to be as deep of a sleep as general anesthesia. He wouldn't have to have a breathing tube. There's not as many risks, I guess. I did learn that if anything was going to happen, it's usually within the first 5 minutes of receiving the anesthesia. So by the time everybody could schedule everything, having been there on a Monday, it was Thursday by the time we got the MRI. So they came to get us and go downstairs and are asking me a bunch of questions, and I feel my heart start to race. And remember, I have cardio issues too. So my heart starts to race and I'm holding him, and they're like, okay, we need to put an IV in him. And I said, all right. So they take him from me and they put him in a room and shut the door. And they have me in a separate room and shut the door. Because they see me like this. I'm like losing my mind. And I just hear him scream and cry and wail, and I'm in this other room and I want to go to him, but I know that I have no support for him at this point. I'm just like, I can't see him like that. It just tears me apart. And they came back and they're like, okay, we got the IV in, and the IV was just for like precautionary measures. They weren't putting anything into the IV. But anyways, they come back in the room and they're like, okay, we're giving him the oral sedation, and I just like went into a severe SVT episode, like almost needed a dentist scene SVT episode. I felt so weak and lightheaded, and I thought I was gonna pass out. And they brought him back in, and he was like kind of starting to drift, and I said, do you have him on a SAT monitor, heart and oxygen monitor? And they're like, no, but we'll get him on there. And I said, do it now. Because usually stuff happens within the first 5 minutes. So they obliged. They were very accommodating and very sweet and understanding. So they got him on. Everything went fine. He did the MRI. They told us to go for a walk. It'd probably be an hour and a half to 2 hours before we saw him again. And they did the MRI, and they woke him up, and I guess he was just screaming because he was hungry, because you had to stop feeding him at a certain point. So they came to get us, and I go downstairs, and I'm so excited to see him. I actually did a scope. I was in the middle of a scope talking about his MRI and his heart and how I was dealing with everything, and that's when the nurse was like, you can go see him now. So we did a periscope, and you could see when I saw him for the first time, it was just like, oh my god, he's breathing. I was so happy and so elated. And anyways, so we got the results about 3-4 hours later, and they found there was no coarctation of the aorta, which means no heart surgery right now. However, it was Thursday by the time that I told his cardiologist that I was willing to hear everything that was wrong with Weston, because I probably only absorbed about 5% of what he told me on Monday. So he came in before the procedure, before the MRI, and told me Weston has what is called supraventricular aortic stenosis, which is a mild, his is mild right now, a mild narrowing in the aorta, starting in the aorta, I think, artery, something like that. And then he has moderate narrowing of the, hang on a minute, branch pulmonary stenosis, which takes the oxygenated blood, I think, to the veins. I know it does something and it goes to the veins. And that's a moderate narrowing. So it's all going to depend on how Weston grows and develops, when we will need the open heart surgery to fix it. There isn't a guarantee that Weston will need open heart surgery at some point in his life, but it's like 95% likely, just because of the elastin and all that. So he will be monitored by the cardiology clinic every 3 months. May need to go to the children's hospital up to 1 to 3 times a year. Just depends. And he's currently seeing a dietitian and developmental pediatrician once a month, and then his regular pediatrician once a month. So we're going to a doctor's appointment every 2 weeks, and it's better than once a week, but it's like we don't get an escape from this. And, you know, eventually, I think after Weston turns 2, I think, maybe they will not want to see him as often. They did say it would be once a year, but I can't remember how old Weston has to be before that happens. It's just because he's a baby and he does a lot of growing and developing in the first year or 2. And they just need to monitor his heart closely and making sure that the narrowings aren't getting worse and stuff like that. They did tell me, though, that it's most likely that the aortic stenosis is going to need to be repaired, because it doesn't always grow with a child. It usually gets worse. So we're expecting that he will need the open heart surgery at some point in his life. This is all... He's chatting back there. I don't know if you can hear it. This is all very overwhelming. I feel like I'm going through the 7 stages of grief right now. And, you know, I went through a period of denial and just being completely overwhelmed. And I'm right at the point where I'm bitter and angry. And I'm trying not to project that onto other people. Because I understand everybody's worries are different, and everybody's worries are, you know, they mean something to them. But it's like when people complain about things that, I guess, I used to have the same complaints too as other people do, and now my worries are like, is my child going to make it out of this procedure? Are we going to be told that we need open heart surgery? Like, those are the things that I worry about now, and it just pisses me off when I hear complaints that are like so meaningless to me. I don't know. So I've made the decision to not post on my YouTube, Facebook account anymore. I just don't have the time for it either. But I don't want to project my bitterness and anger onto somebody else, because I understand those worries are significant to them. But I just can't listen to it. I can't see it. It makes me angry, and it's not their fault. So I don't want to make them feel guilty or whatever. Anyway, so this is our current situation. I had to wait until I actually had a moment to upload this video. Ellie is with her grandmother. Obviously, Weston's chilling in the swing, getting ready for a nap, and then I'm going to be doing some work. Anyways, that's what's going on. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, we were there for a total of 5 days. So we went there for one. I only had clothes for one overnight stay and ended up staying for 5. Yeah, that really sucked. Anywho, I'm going to go. I have no idea when I'll be able to upload another video. As I said, follow me on Periscope. It is the easiest place to get quick updates on the kids. Because I don't know when I'll be back to do another video. In the meantime, I will talk to you later. Bye.